Hey guys, welcome to Techies and my name is Arvind. If you are watching this video in my channel for the very first time, please make sure to subscribe. So in this video, we are going to learn about HTML forms. HTML forms. So generally, what do you mean by HTML forms? So the form in the sense to collect the user information which is given by the user. So that is where we are going to use forms. So if you have logged into some website, it asks for user's name or email ID and password. So that is where you're gonna use forms. So what is the syntax for forms is you need to define in between open tag of form and close tag of form. In between those we are going to define. So how you're going to define a basic HTML form? So using some several type attributes, or we have some elements like input element, so which is most important. Depending on the type attribute, input element is defined in several ways. For example, if it is a text, the type attribute will be text, and if it is radio, type attribute is radio, and if you want to submit the data, the type attribute is submit. So let me define some basic HTML form. So generally input element is one of the most important elements, so where we can use more number of times. So let me use some text editor which makes me easy and get understand. So I'll create one new file. So it's a form.html. so what is a basic HTML form? And the title is HTML forms. So open the form tag. Take whenever you are going to enter some data like username or password, you need to have some labels, right? So take the label tag. So enter username or your name, something like that, username, and enter password. So we are going step by step, and let me open this form and show you how it going to looks like. So enter username and enter passwords, but where you need to enter, that is where we are going to use something called input element, which is one of the most important elements in HTML forms. The username is text. If it is email, use the email, and username, keep the username. So if you want to enter email, use the email. So let me go for it. So the input element, what is the type? So if it is a text, use text, or if it is a radio, use radio. It is email, then go for email. It is password, then go for password. This is where we are going to use the type attribute in input element. So type here is text and username. So here I want to use a break tag, br, right? So now refresh it. So this is where the enter username and enter password, and after entering all these details, you need to submit. So type is submit, where the data is submit, and the name of the button is, let me take the submit only, right? This is how it's going to look, the basic HTML form. This is how it's going to look. So if you want email, you can change here the type email or password, here password. Okay, so now I want to enter the data. Let me enter. So once, let me refresh this, Arvind some password 12345, enter, submit. Now when I submit the data, so there is one attribute is going to call, that is method attribute, which is a default get method. So if you don't define any method attribute in the form, so then it's going to call a default method called get, where our data is published. So form for the user's data is consists of sensitive information, password, username. It should not be published. So now if you see the URL, so username it's Arvind, password is 12345. So here when I enter the password, it's showing as dots, but whereas in URL my password got published. So this is not a very good practice. So when you are going to use a sensitive information, make sure to call a method called called post method, where our data or users data will be protected. So close this and open once again, Arvind, and what is the password I am going to enter is 12345. Submit. Yes, it's got submitted. So this is how the post method will look like. So whenever you are whenever the user information you need to protect, right? So if you need to protect the user information, then you have to go for method attribute, which is post. So but there is one very important thing we forgot here. So I have given label and input, but I didn't make any connection. So either it may think enter username, or maybe input like this, enter password, maybe input it takes as name your username. We need to make a connection, so we have to make a connection for these two. You have to define with an ID, which is for username like UN, and in the label we have to provide something called using for attribute. The ID should be given here. So this is where you making the connection here. This is how you make the connection. This is a very good practice. If you don't define, in the future you may get some issues like it does not read, it won't read actually. So make sure to define this ID, and for you need to make a connection. Now again refresh it, something like 1234 something. Submit. Yes, now enter password. This consists of password. Now whenever I want to submit, whenever I'm submitting the data, it shows nothing, but I want to define something, a thank message. So there is one more attribute which is called action. So whatever the action you want to perform after submitting, that is where we use action. So after submitting the data, I want to thank the user. Thanks for submitting the data. Thanks.html. So let me create one new file called thanks.html. Thanks.html. So basic HTML form. In the h1, thanks for submitting the data. So if you want to color, use the style attribute, and color is red. Refresh. Fine. Submit. So thanks for submitting. This is where we use action attribute. So this is how it's going to work. This is the basic HTML form structure, where you need to know this. In the later tutorial we'll learn more and more, and if the method, as I told earlier, make sure these are the one of the very important things you should not forget, and the connection between a label and the input, right? So thank you very much, and please make sure to subscribe to my channel AR Techies, and please share the video if you like it. Thank you.